Kendrick Lamar just detonated a nuclear device in the middle of the music internet, and he did it with 30 seconds of audio that was not even his own song. Let that settle for a second, because the implications are staggering. The most dominant rapper on the planet did not release an album. He did not drop a music video. He did not sit down for a primetime interview or stage some overproduced rollout spectacle with billboards and countdown timers. He let a producer play a fragment of his voice on an underground radio platform, and within minutes, the entire hip-hop infrastructure buckled under the weight of its own reaction. Every timeline collapsed, every group chat ignited, every commentator who had been sleepwalking through the current landscape suddenly snapped awake because the sound they were hearing did not belong to the era they had been suffering through. It belonged to something else entirely. And if you think this is just another feature on just another producer debut, you are catastrophically misreading the chessboard, because what Kendrick Lamar just accomplished with this single snippet is expose every structural weakness in the modern rap ecosystem, while simultaneously reminding every listener why he occupies a tier that no other living artist can even visually locate on a map. But before we dismantle every layer of what just happened and why it recalibrates the trajectory of the entire genre for the remainder of the year, you need to hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications, because the information pipeline on this channel is accelerating, and you do not want to be the last person to understand what is coming. Now, let me construct the full picture for you, because context is not background noise. Here, context is the entire foundation. Over the past several months, the conversation in hip-hop has deteriorated to a point that can only be described as spiritually vacant. You have artists who are positioned as the leaders of the genre, releasing projects that feel like they were assembled in a corporate focus group, with a spreadsheet dictating every creative decision. The discourse has devolved into numbers games and legal documentation drama and petty internet confrontations that have absolutely zero connection to the craft of making music that resonates in the human chest. The culture has been starving, not for content, because content is everywhere. Content is drowning us, but for meaning, for something that forces you to stop scrolling and actually listen, for something that demands you sit with it and unpack it and argue about it with your people for hours after the song ends. And that is the exact vacuum that Kendrick Lamar just filled with a snippet that barely scratches the surface of what is approaching on the horizon. Here is what we know as verified fact. On July 20th, Donald Glover premiered a previously unheard track titled How to Pray on his GILGA Radio platform. The record is a collaboration between producer Dahi, Kendrick Lamar, and R&B vocalist Amber Mark. It is scheduled to appear on Dahi's debut solo album, Black Boy Alternative, which officially releases on August 28th. Now, for anyone who does not fully grasp the weight of the Dahi connection, let me illuminate why this matters beyond a standard production credit. Dahi is not some aspiring beatmaker searching for a career-elevating cosign. This is the architect behind Money Trees, which stands as one of the most culturally embedded beats in Kendrick Lamar's entire catalog. He contributed production to Damn. He shaped textures on Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers. The creative relationship between these two extends back over a decade, and it is anchored not in industry convenience, but in a genuine artistic dialogue that has produced some of the most sonically adventurous moments in modern rap. So, when Kendrick Lamar elects to appear on Dahi's first solo project, the message is unmistakable. He is not pursuing the trendiest producer of the quarter. He is returning to someone who comprehends his creative DNA at a structural level, someone who knows how to build a soundscape that gives his writing room to breathe without suffocating it under unnecessary ornamentation. And the result is a song that has already sent shockwaves through the culture on the strength of a fragment alone. Now, let me dissect what is actually happening inside this snippet, because the lyrical architecture is executing a maneuver that almost no other rapper in the current landscape possesses the capability or the courage to attempt. Kendrick Lamar opens with a passage that equates calling out his partner's name with calling out to God, describing them as one in the same. Immediately, the internet fractured into interpretive camps, trying to decode the implications. Some listeners read this as a theological statement about divinity and the creative force. Others heard it as Kendrick Lamar elevating the person he loves to the status of spiritual perfection, a vision of the sacred made visible through intimacy. But the genius is in the refusal to resolve. He plants the seed and steps back. He does not hand you the answer. He hands you the question and leaves you to wrestle with it in your own mind. That is a choice, and it is a choice that most songwriters never make because it requires a level of confidence in your audience that the modern algorithm actively discourages. Then comes the section that stopped me cold. He raps about cold stares and surviving something. He says he needs nurture. He asks whether that is a promise. The city raised him. The blood spilled, changed him. The world blamed him. And threaded through all of that trauma and accumulated weight, he is asking the person beside him, not for physical perfection, not for aesthetic spectacle, not for social status, but for nurture. That distinction is not a minor lyrical preference, it is a philosophical repositioning of what matters in human connection. What Kendrick Lamar is doing in that passage is stripping away every superficial metric that contemporary culture uses to evaluate relationships and replacing it with something unguarded and uncomfortable and achingly real. He is saying that beneath the armor and the battle scars and the accolades and the championships, he is a human being who needs to be cared for. And the way he delivers those lines does not sound like performed vulnerability, optimized for engagement. It sounds like a confession that escaped between takes before he could catch it. But then arrives the line that crystallizes everything about why Kendrick Lamar functions on a plane that his contemporaries cannot reach. He says, "Teach me how to pray, and I will love you for now." For now. Those two words are performing more narrative labor than most rappers deliver across an entire album. The conventional approach, the safe approach, the approach that the algorithm would reward because it is clean and emotionally uncomplicated, would be, "Teach me how to pray and we will be together forever." That is the resolution audiences expect. That is the Disney ending. That is the bow on the package. But Kendrick Lamar does not hand you bows. He hands you open wounds and trusts you to sit with them. He is saying, yes, I will love you, and yes, this is sacred, and yes, I see the divine in you, but I am also still a person, and something might fracture, and I might not remain forever, so I am choosing to love you for now, with the full force of everything I have, while the now still exists. That is not a love song. That is an existential posture articulated through melody, and it is the kind of writing that separates songwriters from authors. Certain artists construct songs that resolve themselves neatly by the final chorus. Kendrick Lamar constructs songs that leave you carrying more questions than you arrived with. You finish listening and you have to replay it because you missed a layer. You have to sit with the discomfort. You have to debate it. And that is the precise opposite of what the current music ecosystem conditions audiences to anticipate. Now, there is another dimension of this snippet that warrants scrutiny, and it speaks to a creative discipline that Kendrick Lamar has been exercising more intentionally than nearly anyone in the genre. He let Amber Mark sing. He allowed the artist, whose entire craft is vocal performance, to carry the melodic weight of the record. And if you have been monitoring the current state of rap and R&B collaboration, you already recognize that this has become a genuine structural problem. You have rappers who built their reputations on lyrical sharpness suddenly deciding that they are also singers and commandeering the melodic portions of songs that would have been exponentially stronger if they had simply stepped aside and allowed a trained vocalist to do what they were built to do. The auto-tune generation has produced an illusion that anyone can hold a melody if the software parameters are configured properly. But there exists a harmonic depth and tonal sensitivity that Amber Mark contributes to this record that no degree of pitch correction can manufacture. The harmonies, the dynamic control, the emotional current running through her phrasing, that is not processing, that is ability refined over years of dedication to a specific discipline. And Kendrick Lamar recognized that the most potent creative decision he could make on this song was to supply the lyrical gravity while allowing her to provide the sonic elevation. That is the signature of an artist, secure enough in his own contribution that he does not need to saturate every second of the recording with his own voice.
It is restraint as power. Now, let me direct your attention to the picture that accompanied this snippet, because even the visual layer is communicating. The image of Kendrick Lamar that circulated alongside the audio was described across social media as unhinged. His beard was not lined up, his hairline was. There was a deliberate asymmetry to his appearance that suggested someone who had been locked in a creative space for an extended period, prioritizing nothing except the work. People compared the image to the boogeyman, which is the moniker that has shadowed him throughout this entire competitive era. And whether that image was strategically released or simply captured in an unguarded moment, it reinforces the perception that Kendrick Lamar has been in isolation mode, not resting, not coasting, working. And when an artist of his magnitude disappears from the public eye and resurfaces with visual evidence of obsessive creative labor, the implication is clear. Something significant has been constructed in the silence. Now, let me address the macro architecture, because this snippet does not exist in isolation. It is a component of a pattern that has been assembling for months, and when you trace the connections, the outline becomes impossible to dismiss. At the 2026 Grammy Awards, Kendrick Lamar appeared on the red carpet wearing a boxing hand wrap on his right hand, not a medical device, not a fashion accessory, a boxing wrap, the type fighters wear beneath their gloves before stepping into the ring. Dave Free, his PG Lang co-founder, posted a close-up photograph of that hand wrap on his Instagram story. Nothing these two do is accidental. Every public signal is a transmission. Then Hida J3, who operates within Kendrick Lamar's immediate creative orbit, shared a clip from Roy Jones Jr.'s documentary, accompanied by the caption, "Message from the Boogeyman."
The boogeyman being the identifier that has tracked Kendrick throughout this entire period of cultural dominance. And when you rewind to the lyrics on Euphoria, the diss track that helped define the 2024 competitive cycle, Kendrick Lamar rapped, "He is Terence Thornton. I am Terence Crawford. Yeah, I am whooping feet." Terence Crawford, one of the most devastatingly complete boxers of this generation. A reference that at the time registered as a battle metaphor, but in retrospect functions as a breadcrumb dropped deliberately into the path. There have been corroborating reports from industry insiders with documented accuracy that Kendrick Lamar's next full-length project is boxing-themed, a concept album organized around the mythology, discipline, violence, strategy, and psychological architecture of the sport. And when you align every marker, the hand wrap at the Grammys, the Dave Free signal, the Roy Jones Jr. connection, the Terence Crawford reference, the Pernell Whitaker footage that surfaced earlier, and now this snippet arriving with the kind of calculated timing that feels like the opening bell of a 12-round championship fight, the speculation graduates into a roadmap. Kendrick Lamar is constructing something thematic and cohesive and ambitious, and the snippet that just landed is the first audio evidence of what that era sounds like. This brings us to the question consuming every conversation, which is, when does the album actually arrive? And while I cannot hand you a confirmed date, I can navigate you through the logic, because the patterns are legible if you understand how this artist operates. The Dahi feature releases on August 28th. That gives the record approximately 4 to 6 weeks to breathe and circulate and perform what Kendrick Lamar features invariably do, which is commandeer the cultural conversation and make skeptics visibly uncomfortable. The conventional timeline from feature to full project typically runs 6 to 8 weeks, which positions a potential album release in the October to November corridor. And when you factor in that GNX arrived at the end of November, coinciding with Thanksgiving, the precedent is already established for a late quarter drop. There is also the Jay-Z variable, which cannot be separated from this equation. Jay-Z is reportedly engineering something around the 2027 Super Bowl halftime show, and Pharrell inadvertently revealed on a Yankee Stadium stage that a new Jay-Z album appears to be in motion. Kendrick Lamar and Jay-Z have sustained a relationship of reciprocal respect and strategic coordination for years. They do not collide on each other's moments. If Jay-Z commandeers September for a Super Bowl announcement and album cycle, Kendrick Lamar would logically defer that month and claim October or November as his own territory.
December remains improbable because the industry effectively enters hibernation for the holidays, and contending with Christmas chart dynamics is not a maneuver that aligns with how either artist structures their release strategy. So the window compresses to October or November, with November holding the strongest probability given the GNX anniversary alignment and the boxing concept potentially echoing the GNX lyric where Kendrick Lamar declared it gets spooky in October. Perhaps October was always the prelude and November was always the destination. But here's the deeper truth that I need you to absorb about why this moment transcends release dates and insider scoops. The snippet that just surfaced is generating more cultural disruption than full albums from artists who have been aggressively campaigning for attention throughout the entire year. Let the magnitude of that register.
30 seconds of Kendrick Lamar contributing to a producer's debut album is producing more conversation, more analysis, more excitement, and more organic debate than entire projects backed by major label marketing apparatuses and coordinated social media offensives and podcast tour circuits. And the explanation is not complicated. The audience is not starving for volume, they are drowning in volume. They are starving for substance. They are starving for music that treats them as intelligent participants rather than passive consumers. They are starving for an artist who approaches every release as if it is the most consequential thing he has ever created, because to Kendrick Lamar, it genuinely is. He does not produce filler. He does not generate throwaway content. He does not jump on trending beats to maintain visibility. Every appearance, every feature, every leaked fragment is a deliberate component of a larger architectural narrative, and the audience can sense that intentionality, even when they cannot articulate it consciously. Now, I need to address the condition of the genre directly, because this is where the contrast becomes almost unbearable to observe. We have spent months watching the most visible figures in hip-hop engage in discourse that has no relationship to music. Legal documents being brandished on podcasts as though a court filing is equivalent to a verse. Gossip repackaged as industry analysis. First-week streaming statistics being cited as though chart positioning is interchangeable with cultural permanence. The conversation has been gutted, and what remains is a hollow shell where people argue about metrics instead of meaning. And into that evacuated space steps Kendrick Lamar with a song about nurture and duality and spiritual vulnerability. And the listener response is not hype, it is relief. It is the reaction of an entire community that has been wandering through a creative desert and suddenly encountered water. That response tells you everything about the gap between what the audience craves and what the industry has been feeding them. Kendrick Lamar could release his weakest project, and it would still reorganize the gravitational field of the genre, because the floor of his capability still operates at an altitude that most artists never approach at their peak. But based on what this snippet reveals about the writing density, based on the thematic ambition of the boxing concept, based on the caliber of collaborators he has selected, and based on the creative infrastructure he has been quietly assembling, I do not believe we are approaching his weakest. I believe we are approaching Kendrick Lamar at his most concentrated and his most hazardous. The boxing framework is not decorative branding, it is a worldview encoded into the structure of the project. Boxing is about patience and precision, and the ability to read an opponent, and the discipline to wait for the exact moment to strike, and the understanding that victories are secured in the preparation, long before the opening bell ever sounds. And if Kendrick Lamar has been in camp mode, studying and refining and sharpening every instrument in his arsenal, while the rest of the genre has been trading surface-level provocations on the internet, then what is about to arrive is not merely an album, it is a title fight performance from a competitor who has been silently training for a level of confrontation that nobody else even realized was scheduled. So, here is the position. The snippet is live. The full track lands August 28th on Dahi's Black Boy Alternative. The boxing album is in motion. The evidence has been accumulating for months, and it is converging into something that can no longer be dismissed as speculation. The genre is starving, and Kendrick Lamar is about to feed it in a manner that will render everything else on the table look like appetizers. Whether you are a believer who has been exercising patience or a skeptic who has been constructing arguments against what is approaching, the next few months are going to be inescapable. The king is not merely back, he never departed. He was in camp preparing for the most significant fight of his career, and the bell is about to ring. Let me know your perspective on everything we unpacked. Do you see the boxing album arriving in October or November? Did you catch something in the snippet that I may have overlooked? Leave your analysis in the comments because the dialogue is what gives this community its identity. And if you want to trace the full arc of how Kendrick Lamar arrived at this exact moment, check out the video on your screen right now, where I map the complete timeline of every move that led here. You are not going to want to miss that one.